Joining us now, of course, she's the longtime head coach of the Washington Huskies, national champion head coach, of course, an alum at Washington, and has just now recently added the title head coach of the U.S. national team. I speak of head coach Heather Tarr joining us here and In the Circle. You just keep getting titles added to you.
Yeah, just what you want, right? It's exciting. I'm proud. I'm excited, and I'm happy to perform this role and see where it takes us.
Well, let's first talk about this news now. You're taking over as the head coach of the national team. You were the assistant, obviously, for the Olympic team. Was this something you wanted to do? I know we talked a couple years back when you were the head coach of the under-19 head coach, and you really enjoyed that run, winning that gold medal for that team. Was that something in the back of your mind? Did this just kind of happen? Take us through this process and your decision to go ahead and take over.
Well, as many of your listeners may know, many of them are the college softball coaches, and of course the fans of college softball. But um, softball is a way of life, and fortunately, unfortunately, we kind of make it our lives, and it's great. And I have done that. Obviously, I've been a career coach and have done it since I graduated from the University of Washington. And I didn't really foresee myself being the head coach of the USA team ever, really, even as an assistant coach. But like you said, being a part of that coaching staff for the U19 team in 2019, it kind of gave me a little bit of inspiration. Like, man, we can do some great things here in the United States. And then, of course, with the Olympics being extended by a year beyond 2020 on into 21, it was kind of a loop-de-loop of life and all those kind of things. But yeah, here we are. I've been named the head coach, and you have to really think about, like, how much do I want to put my life into the game, and how much do I want to dedicate to just softball? And that's hard because it is your life. But I think I've learned over the last couple of years to try to have a little bit of separation between softball and normal life. And I think I'm doing that. And I definitely have my hands full with both jobs, but I'm happy to do it.
But you've always had a passion for this, because I remember I first met you in person in Clearwater in 2017 during those World Championships. You have a passion for this, and you even mentioned in the press release, and even you've just released a YouTube about you feel you can make a difference with USA softball in the international game beyond just on the field. That you want to make this grow bigger. You've had a passion for this for a while. That probably is part of the reason why you want this challenge.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things in international sports that are not in control, as you may think. You don't have as much control over the scheduling. You have very little control over the funding, over all of the people that do or don't make the team. There's a lot that goes into it, more so than even at the college level. And I'm interested in those challenges and making some of that those challenges be a little bit more transparent to everybody. Of course, I was somebody on the outside looking in at the USA system for ever since I started playing softball back late in high school, when a lot of programs added softball due to the fact that softball was going to be in the 96 Olympic Games, all that kind of stuff. So watching it from that perspective, I've always kind of been, man, like, why does this seem so hidden, or how do you not all know about this? And so, as much as I can within my control and my role, I want to make sure that the best players play international softball first and foremost. The best players play USA softball. I want to try to get the best coaches involved, and to make it be something for all. It's not like a hidden thing. It's not for just a unique group. Of course, 15 players make the Olympic team. That's hardly anything. But I think it's a game that I want everybody to be able to touch, to feel, to see, and to know the process for.
And you've been also, and you mentioned this on the video side, and anybody I've talked to, Coach Eric, I've talked to everybody that's been involved in the international game. Funding is such a factor that people don't understand, the lack of funding. You've been outspoken about that as well. I imagine that's something too that you want to get that word out, not just for coaches, but just for USA softball. I mean, even in the world, to help grow the game so the sport can stay in the Olympics long term. That's one of the issues, is when the sport goes away, the funding goes away in a lot of these places.
Yeah, it's a it's a global issue, it's a challenge, I think, to stay a sport at the national level, without possibly funding from your Olympic committee, without funding from, let's say, maybe USA softball's side, where everything funnels up to USA softball. Maybe it does in USA soccer, where the youth sports fund on the ground
Yep.
the upper echelons of the sport. And we don't have that. And I don't know how I can impact that. But man, like, can we have some conversations with those that know how to make money in this game in the United States, to then help, the political factions that have been formed over time, to like say, you know what, like, there's money in this game. The Ali Aguilars, the Monica Abbotts, I don't care if they represent just USA softball, but they represent PGF. They represent the Alliance. They represent the men and women that run these tournaments, that the travel ball players aspire to become a part of this game. And at some point in time, when I click ESPN just now on my TV and I search for softball and I see the USA flag against the Japanese flag and it says Japan wins gold, if we all want something different to happen, we all have to do something different on a daily basis. And it does start with funding, and funding for the sport, maybe from the bottom up somehow.
Well, and the international game, such an exciting game. I mean, you were part of one of the most exciting games I ever saw, that gold medal game in 2019. You win on the walk-off home run to win the gold in the under 19. You've talked about it. That's one of your greatest thrills there, and we see that the competition level, even in this Olympics, was extraordinary. There's so many stories, and there's no reason why there can't be that passion for that, like there is in the collegiate game. That's how that's grown.
Well, when you think about, I think our sites are a little bit short sometimes in the United States specifically. So, we see the college game, and of course, like, I love the college game. I want to be the team that is the last team playing in June in Oklahoma City every single year. But it doesn't stop there. The game and the development that can happen for women, specifically ages 23 to now, even like Kat Osterman and those guys this past couple years proved, like, into almost your 40s, look how good you can get if your career can extend beyond your 20s, beyond the college game. It is amazing the development that can happen. I mean, Danielle Laurie is our most, prized possession from, probably in our experience at the University of Washington. Of course, we have Jen Salling and Victoria Hayward, Ali Aguilar, and those guys that got to play. But Danielle is a really cool story to look at, how playing at the international level and extending your career well beyond your college days, you can see a woman and a female athlete literally being the best they've ever been, 10, 15 years after they play the college game.
You make a great point, and you mentioned all the Olympians there that were a part of the Olympics this year. What was that like for you to be an assistant? On Team USA, Ali Aguilar is on the team, but then you're facing Team Canada, which, I had Victoria Hayward on this show. They were literally a couple hits away from being in the gold medal game. Danielle Laurie looked as great as she ever did. There had to be a part of you that had to be stressed out, because you know what they're capable of. What is that unique experience like to have these people that are so important to you, but yet they're living their dream, but yet you're at the opposite end going against them? It's so fascinating. And then Gabby with Australia.
Yeah, great point. It's unreal, to face each other when there's only 6 teams, and you're part of 3 of those teams in some way, shape, or form. It's hard. It's what the daily is for the Canadian athletes, what the daily is for our USA women, and Gabby's path to getting on that team, and Australia getting to the Olympics with even the funding they didn't have as a sport. It's crazy, and it's just so humbling to know, like, how awesome the game is at that level, knowing it's one backhand play away from the scoring run. It's a Sarah Groenewegen pinch hit double to then have a perfect relay throw home to tag out the pinch runner. Oh my gosh, like, it's just the coolest thing to be able to witness. I wish more people could have maybe seen it. I know a lot of people watch those games, but if you were a fan of softball and you were watching that, you respect the fact that game is at its best and a pretty fascinating It's a pretty fascinating game at that level.
Pretty amazing too, because all of you had to face adversity. You were disrupted in your training, right? You didn't like Team USA didn't have their normal tour. You weren't playing in front of people, and yet the high level. And the thing that impressed me was the pitching, the high level of pitching, because it was hard to hit anybody in that tournament. People talked about, well, certain Team USA didn't hit and all that, but nobody hit in that tournament because of the great pitching across the board.
Yeah, the only one that hit was Jen Salling. How about that? Uh, no, it's hard and it's humbling, and it's a little bit different than the college game where you've got your scouting reports and you've got 35 pitchers to worry about, whereas in this you've got maybe 16 pitchers to worry about, and they're at their best, and of course pitchers always have the advantage. The pitching always has the advantage, and so I've been the judge, I've been the jury on the outside looking in, being like, oh, well, this and that, and this is power. You don't have power, you aren't doing this, but at the end of the day, the pitching has the advantage, and to be able to coach in that environment and try to support those athletes through that experience, it's hard. And athletes at those levels sometimes, they're kind of bred to know what they want and know what they need from a scouting report information, from a how we have to go about this. And there are some unique challenges, like you mentioned, about the tour being canceled for our women, specifically the USA women. And they're kind of on their own for a lot. Coach Erickson didn't take a sabbatical again at USF. I mean, he couldn't, and that was a challenge for those women. None of us assistant coaches, were able to spend a lot of time helping those women train, and the advantage goes to those that are training and competing and doing those things. But our women, I'm proud of them for doing what they did, because they didn't have a lot of time to do what they needed to do, and they did with what they could in the best way that they knew how.
Being the head coach in 19 for the under 19 team, which has now been turned into the under 18 level, being the assistant on the Olympic staff, what are some of the things you learned from those experiences that's going to help you now in this position as the national head coach?
Yeah, I think relationships with players, I pride myself in that. You brought up the Canadian USA relations that come into play. Like, I never want the game to come in to and run in front of the relationships I have. And so first and foremost, I just want to keep the relationships I have with the coaches that are in the game that I love and that I'm growing with, whether that be whoever becomes part of the USA staff in the future, coaches in college that have players that maybe miss the tryout by one. Like, I want to make sure people don't feel slighted or don't feel unincluded. That's hard. For the 18 players that make this team come January, we're going to be in a situation as USA softball, unlike we ever have been. Maybe even 10 years ago, unlike we were 10 years ago. I think the relationships within USA softball and the pro leagues are a little bit better and different, and people have worked hard to make sure that women aren't forced to choose, oh, you have to pick this or you have to pick that. Of course, me being the head coach, I don't even have full control over that, but I would just hope the people and the powers that be that give these women the best opportunities. And so you asked me about what did I learn from the U19 thing. I think it's just about relationships. People might try to throw swords at you from outside, like, oh, you're USA coach, you're trying to make this a recruiting advantage for yourself. You know what? I'm not. Like, whether it does or doesn't turn out to be, I mean, I could intentionally force that to not happen. That would be foolish. I could intentionally cause, like, oh, I'm going to, try to transfer portal people. That's not what this is about. I see a way bigger future for women. If, people say that, it frustrates me a little bit. People also question, like, oh, well, hey, in 2028, if you take a sabbatical, that might be during my time when I play. And I mean, someone's planted that in someone's head. So it's a little bit, kind of, you're serving, you're volunteering for this game, for these women. And so I just want to kind of keep that out there. Like, I want the women to have the best opportunity possible. And there might be times where I can't be involved because I have other commitments. And so the coaching staff, I think that's what I learned with the U19 experience. Man, we had Cindy Ball, we had Tim Walton, we had Tony Baldwin. We had two, people throwing batting practice for us that were awesome. And they gave these women the best chance to win, regardless of maybe me being fully involved or not. And so I guess that's what I'd like to say is I learned about creating a community for these women to go to be able to be supported. Even if there's not financial support, they can go, to different regions of the United States and go work with this coach. and go train with maybe, with them off to the side so that they have opportunities to continue to develop and continue to get better.
Is that one of the reasons why you came out? You came out with a YouTube video on the Husky YouTube page to kind of clear up some things, because you say you were getting asked some questions, and you made it emphasis clear that the U.S. head coaching job is a year to year. We won't know if the sport will be in the Olympics till 2025. Was that part of the reason to kind of clear up some of that misconceptions and omens out there?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know. I mean, of course, if I'm not involved in international softball and I don't really know how it works, I'm looking at maybe me in the post from, oh, I was been named head coach, like, oh, well, she's going to be the coach in the 28 Olympics. Well, of course, like, who wouldn't want to be that person? And of course, I want to support our women to that and to the end, to, whatever my role is, I don't know, but man, like, there's so much left to be. I like the assumption that it's that, and that we're going to go on into LA and win the gold medal. But man, like, it's not like that. Unfortunately, it's not like that. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to do my best for the next, 365 days until, there's a resubmission for the new coach. I'm going to see how this goes. I'm going to see how this experience is. And I want to keep these relationships with these women who do play the game and want to play the game, as long as they can on into, their 30s and even 40s. And I feel like I'm just a steward of the game. I don't own the position. I don't, I'm not King Kong. Like, I'm not the person that just like owns the game and is the Wizard of Oz behind the screen. Like, that's just not how it works. And, but I am committed to the University of Washington first and foremost. I mean, of course, we all know that is college coaches coaching in USA. What pays the bills? Not USA softball.
Right.
No disrespect to them, but my primary focus is on the University of Washington. But man, like, I can do both. I can do both. My heart is in both places, and I know I can do it.
No, and I think people are excited, certainly, that you're doing that. We're speaking with Heather Tarr here on In the Circle. You mentioned your Washington job. That you had to do some things this offseason while you were with the USA team, including hiring a new assistant coaches. Let's start with that direction. First of all, what is that process like? I mean, you've got a full plate, and I know that you've told me this in the past. Being a student athlete kind of prepares you for this, because as a student athlete, you're used to multitasking, doing different things. But here you are, you're with Team USA, but you're also then later you got to figure out hiring a new assistant, which you do with Kyle Novak, comes over as a former baseball player at Oregon State. You add Ashley Carter as a volunteer. Sis Bates will still be on your staff as a student coach. Just take me through that process, as now you're, getting this staff together as well.
Yeah, it was a challenge this summer to kind of literally have no feet on the USA soil when all that was going down. And, I wasn't sure which direction JT was going to go, if he was going to stay or go to Georgia. Of course, support him in both opportunities. But once he made the decision, I think we're about a week away from the Olympics. It was hard just for us, I think, like, okay, like, how do we hire? How do we go about this? How do we think about University of Washington softball program in a little bit of a different light, like, okay, this could be scary. This could be a new thing. But fortunately for me, Lance Glasso, he was right by my side. He was in Japan throwing BP to the ladies of USA. And so for both of us to be gone, that was a challenge. But Sis Bates was on the recruiting trail as much as she could be. She did a great job, in that role. And it was hard for her because, of course, everybody at every ballpark wanted to come talk to her and be a part of, getting an autograph, but she couldn't do that. And so, focusing on keeping the University of Washington recruiting momentum going forward, that was a challenge. But then on into late in the summer, making a hire that late, it's hard to make hires late in college softball because, usually when you change coaching staffs or you have movement on your staff, you kind of know already, who's going where. And, Kaya Gibson was already slated to go be on staff at UCF. Whitney Jones and Cindy Ball had already had conversations to do that. I'm not there to stand in anybody's way and move things around how they weren't going to go. And so it put me in a position to really look outside the box for our program and like, hey man, like, how can we really idealize the future different than how it was over the last 10 years? And it's been a challenge, but it's been exciting to add somebody like Kyle Novak, who is energetic, who is wise, who's been coached by Pat Casey at Oregon State and all those guys that, had so much success there. And then to add somebody like Ashley Carter, who is more experienced than most volunteer assistants that you'd get. She's had a lot of great experiences. She's very thoughtful in what she does and very helpful. And then, to top it all off, knowing that Sis Bates was going to be on our staff, at least for this year, for sure, that's a feather in our cap to keep that continuity in what Husky softball is, and to help, almost be like a full-time training officer to the new coaches on our staff. And then to add to that, I'll let you ask some more questions in a second. We have a whole bunch of new staff. Our athletic trainer's brand new. Travis Edwards, our strength coach, Cody Boscom is new. And so we have like a whole bunch of new people on staff, and it's exciting because it's just a bunch of new energy.
I sense that. Like, do you feel like it's kind of a not a new beginning, but it seems like re-energized a little bit, perhaps, right? Some different ideas coming in?
Yeah, it's a challenge, like once you've thought the way you think for the last 10 years, and, like just specifically having Lance, JT, and I be, pretty much a continuous staff since 2009, like it's hard to teach people your way. It's
Sure.
hard to add, like there's so many things you don't have to communicate about because you already know. So it's probably like the best brain teaser for me that I could possibly have at my age, to challenge me to be like, all right, you have to communicate, you have to use your people, you have to think about this in a different way, and you have to use people in the best way possible. So I'm grateful for that. It has been not easy, but it's been a cool challenge, and it's been fun.
Had you known Kyle and Ashley at some point previously, and that's what you had them in the back of your mind, did it just kind of develop through a connection or through this process? How did they get into the vision where you felt like, okay, these are the people we got to bring in?
Yeah, Kyle, I did not know. Coach Carter, I'd seen or heard of here or there, but I've never known any of them, and so it was kind of a random for me to hire people maybe outside of our system, outside of our bubble. But Kyle brought some things that I was looking for, a lot of mental game stuff. He's been mentored by Alan Jaeger, Colin Henderson, some people that really have a lot of great things to bring into our game. So I saw him a lot as that. I see him as somebody that can work with our outfield, that can work with our offense. He's not a swing guru like people probably think. You're like, oh, you're going to hire a hitting coach, you're going to hire the person that teaches swings. But yeah, we think that's important, we think that's awesome, but I think from a mindset standpoint, like being an offensive player that can compete in the box is something that we've always been good at Washington, and so Kyle really fits in well there. Ashley Carter actually has worked with Kyle for the last couple years in a side business owned by Mitch Canham, who is the head coach at Oregon State, but by Brent Lillibridge, who played at Washington. So there's some commonalities there, and Kyle and Ashley knowing each other before they even got here is kind of a little bit of an advantage. And I think our gals really see Kyle specifically as somebody that can really bring some like rooted value to them as humans, not just softball players. And same as Coach Carter. She's people over player all day, every day. And I love that about both the new coaches.
Did Sis always want to be a coach? Is that something you two talked about even prior to the last year or so? Because you mentioned she handled some of the recruiting responsibility. That's a big responsibility, but it tells you how much you trust her. And I would imagine she'll have a big role in this staff, probably helping the infielders, because who better to learn, defense than her?
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect fit. I think it's, God looking out for us in one. I think this summer when JT was deciding to stay or go to Georgia, he really did a good job with Sis, mentoring her on the recruiting trail and really giving her some tools to really hit the ground running with. But also she's a natural at it. She sees things for what they are. She sees the game well. And I think, I never wanted to take away from her future opportunities to maybe see what this pro stuff is all about, see how to leverage maybe her professionality, if you will. And weirdly, 3 years ago, we told her that we'd pay for her master's for 2 years. And luckily so, because during the COVID year, we already had funding support for her for 2 years. And so that second year happens to be this year. And because of how COVID and the COVID rule hits, if COVID didn't happen, she would have been a graduate manager this year and not able to coach. But because of how COVID works, and that she's technically in her 5th year of eligibility, where she could, she could run cross country, she could play soccer, she could be on the basketball team this year. Because of that, and because of where she played, she actually can perform the role as student assistant. Like, man, that's someone looking out for the Huskies. And, to be in that role as a graduate manager is hard, especially for someone like Sis, who has so much to offer. And for her to be able to be deemed and put in that role as student assistant, like, what a home run for us.
What's the key? You've developed a lot of your players have gone on to coaching. You mentioned obviously 2 of them. Whitney Jones just went to UCF. Gibson's at UCF. I mean, Victoria Haywood's back now in coaching at San Diego State. Jen Sallin just get named as an assistant on the Canadian national team. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, that doesn't include a Sydney Ball who's on your staff, Gina Carbonado, who's a head coach at Santa Clara. Like, what is the keys there? Because you've developed a nice big tree there, and you've always helped each other out. You mentioned JT helping Sis out. That's part of it, isn't it? That you all help each other out when you've been in the system.
Yes, you like know so many things. It's awesome. You're awesome at this, but it's just a neat thing to say that the people that you work with, if they want to coach, they're going to have the foundation built through their experience at Washington to be able to go on and take what we do here and replicate it in their own way at another place. I think I've been given that by the coaches that coach me, whether it's been my junior high PE teacher, Bruce Brown, who's still in the game developing coaches, not softball, of course, just in the game, if you will, developing coaches, to being able to be at Pacific with Brian Colsey, who let me literally do everything. And then when Cindy Ball joined our staff after she got done playing, like, I learned how to, I think, just coach in a way that's repeatable, that's never ending, that you never really have it figured out. And through our players and through our experience, we're constantly learning. And I think then that pays off when the student athletes that play in our system want to take that and run with it. And we've got a couple in our system right now that I think are going to be great coaches. Not only Sis Bates, but Sammy Reynolds is one. And, they're dedicating their time to coaching and teaching at the youth levels in our area and making an impact already. And so I see them continuing to, get out there and grow our coaching tree.
Coach Cozy's entering his 30th season at Pacific, by the way. You were a part of that for a good part of that. Like,
no, it's scary. I don't like doing the math like that. That means that I'm old.
No, but obviously, it sounds to me he's had a big influence in you, right? A lot of the way you approach things is the way he taught you. Fair?
Yeah. Well, I credit him for a lot because, he didn't really like to do things I like to do. I liked to get out on the field, and I'm like, well, I don't really coach the outfielders, but I think the outfielders should be doing this. And he's working with outfielders. Like, all right, well, just tell me what to tell them, or you can work with them. Cindy Ball didn't have a pitching coach for her 4 years time. I mean, Coach Colsey worked with her, and no disrespect to him, and he would be fine with me telling you guys this, but like, I became kind of a pitching coach for Cindy during her 4 years, and that helped grow me. I did any and all roles. It was just Colsey and I for a majority of the time. And when I got to Washington as a first-year head coach at the age of 29, I'm hitting the ground running. I think I can do any and all things in the game. And so that's what I'm most grateful for him allowing me the freedoms to really explore the game and love the game.
Let's talk about your team outlook now for this year. You won't have Sis Bates in the lineup card. You won't have, that's going to be a little different for you. You don't have Morgan Flores, but you do have Sammy Reynolds coming back, among others. Gabby Plain, a finalist for Player of the Year, back. What have you how's the fall gone for your team? What's your overall thoughts on your outlook on this team? You got a lot of young talent coming in, including 3 freshmen. They're going to be a part of the, international this coming up shortly here, as well as the under-18 team. But just talk about your overall team.
I'm excited for this group. We have 17 women. Last year we had 24. It's a huge different contrast in quantities, coaching a group of 17 versus coaching 24. It's totally different. I love all 17 women. I think, honestly, all 17 have a chance to help us. Some people might be like, oh yeah, right. No, you probably have like 4 or 5 players that are going to be impact. But man, I think the strength of our group is that we don't have anybody on this team that shouldn't be on this team. And they're super athletic. Jalen Alchin in center field. I'm excited about her up and coming year. Kelly Lynch had surgery in the offseason on her finger that was basically broken from the time she ended travel ball till now. And she's getting healthy as we speak. So that's exciting. And then our middle infield is going to be completely different, potentially. Of course, Taryn Atley and Sis Bates holding it down for the last, it seems like decade. That's going to be different for us. But Silent Rain anchors us at third, and Bailey Klingler is kind of a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, can do any and all things, and two catchers behind the plate that are going to replace Morgan Flores and Olivia Johnson and Jen Cummings. A pitching staff, I think we're going to be able to develop better than when we did last year with just kind of relying on Gabby. So I'm excited about all things and the depth that we're going to create and the foundation that we're going to be able to build, not this year, but for years to come.
You feel good about the staff behind there? Obviously, Gabby, Kelly Lynch, you mentioned this. Will she continue being a two-way player for you?
Yeah, I think so. She's just a great defender over at first. Her offense is going to keep growing and getting better and better. But yeah, we expect her to pitch for us. And Sarah Willis threw well this summer for the Circus when she played in the Florida Gulf Coast League. That was great experience for her. Brooke Nelson, I believe, is going to have a nice year for us. And then Pat Moore. Pat Moore graduated last year, lefty, throws 67. She threw a no-hitter in the regionals this past May. She was gone. She was going to be done, but she said she had unfinished business. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Come back in the fold. And she's having a great year so far. And we're excited for her to, help balance out the Gabby Plain pitching staff that we're going to try to build for our team this year.
Do you have a vocal leader right now established? Kind of like, people felt like Sis Bates and others, you mentioned were the leaders. Who's that leader right now? Is that still evolving?
No, I believe we have, we have a great group, a pretty deep group of leadership. Of course, our freshmen come right in and, they're kind of the heart and soul a little bit of this group. They go trick-or-treating, snipe the seniors and upperclassmen in their costumes on Halloween night, and they go trick-or-treating out of the blue, go give the team some crap. I think that's kind of unique to say about this group. Silent Rain, she's not silent. She's a nice commander in chief for us, and she knows she needs to be, being a 4-year player. So I would say Silent Rain's one of our leaders. Bailey Klingler, Sammy Reynolds. We don't leave leadership up to one person. I think it's going to be different. We're going to ask a lot of those rookies, Riley Holtorf, Kinsey Fiedler, to be a big presence. But if they've learned anything watching us over the last 4 years, they kind of know what you need to do to be a Husky softball player.
And that's going to be one of my last questions is what is going to be the keys for this group between now, obviously, as you wrap up fall and everything, before February will get going. What are some of the keys for this group to accomplish and happen for this to accomplish your internal goals?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a growing year for us, in that the middle infield is going to be new, the catching is going to be new, and anytime you have that, I mean, there's no question there's going to be some ups and downs, but growing through the opportunities. I mean, our schedule is not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy. And one, the travel. We go to Puerto Vallarta, we come back home. We go to Clearwater, we come back home. We go to the Mary Nutter, we come back home. It's crazy. And we're not going to be able to hide. And it's going to be exciting for this group, specifically just with the new positions being filled and trying to grow this pitching staff.
Well, we look forward to seeing your group out there. I'm excited to be in Clearwater. I'll get to see you over there. But I know it's been a busy time, a hectic schedule, literally. I don't know how you do it, but you do it really well. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy schedule, busy time, but congratulations again on the honor being taken over the U.S. national team. Well deserved. And wish you well. And we'll definitely talk soon.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for what you do. And always appreciate watching your show, and happy to be on it, and looking forward to next year. And hopefully we'll see you in Clearwater.